poor black girl gives a sandwich to a disguised millionaire. He shows up in a Rolls-Royce to express his gratitude, leading to a significant and positive change in her life. What happens when a poor girl shares her last sandwich with a stranger? For Kennedy Moore, that simple act of kindness set off a chain of events that would change her life forever. But little did she know, the man she helped wasn't just any stranger. He was a millionaire with a secret, and he had a life-changing opportunity waiting for her. Want to know how this incredible story unfolds? Keep watching. Please, before we start this story, support us by liking this video, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where you're watching from. Kennedy Moore had never known what it felt like to have more than enough. Her world was a tiny two-room apartment on the east side of Atlanta, where peeling paint and creaking floorboards were as familiar to her as her own reflection. At just 10 years old, Kennedy carried more weight on her small shoulders than any child should. She lived with her grandmother, Miss Loretta Moore, a kind but weathered woman who had raised Kennedy after her parents died in a car accident 5 years ago. Miss Loretta sold homemade sandwiches near the Greyhound station to keep their heads above water. Every morning, Kennedy helped her prepare the sandwiches, wrapping them in wax paper and sliding them into a dented red cooler. That Tuesday afternoon, business was slow. Kennedy sat on an overturned milk crate, legs swinging as she watched people rush by, businessmen glued to their phones, tourists tugging suitcases, and tired locals who didn't have time to stop. Her stomach grumbled. She hadn't eaten all day. Then she noticed him. A man was sitting alone by the trash bins near the edge of the sidewalk. He looked like he hadn't bathed in days. His flannel shirt was stained and torn, his jeans hung loosely from his frame, and his worn boots were duct-taped at the soles. He wasn't asking for anything. He just sat there quietly, head bowed, hands folded over a duffel bag. Kennedy glanced at the cooler, then back at the man. Without a second thought, she stood up, reached in, and pulled out a sandwich. It was peanut butter and jelly, her favorite. She walked over to him, her sneakers crunching against gravel. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly. "Are you hungry?" He looked up, startled. His eyes were tired but kind. I guess I am." She handed him the sandwich. "Here, my grandma made it. It's really good." The man blinked at her, as if unsure whether to accept. "That's very kind of you. But don't you need this?" Kennedy shrugged. "We got more. Besides, you look like you need it more than me." The man took the sandwich with both hands like it was made of gold. "Thank you, young lady. What's your name?" "Kennedy." "Well, Kennedy," he said slowly, "I won't forget this." She smiled. "Okay, I gotta get back before Grandma thinks I ran off." He chuckled quietly as she walked away. Samuel Price, though no one would have guessed it by looking at him, was a billionaire in disguise. He came to places like this to remember what life was really about. And on that day, a poor girl's sandwich reminded him more than any speech or dollar sign ever could. From a quiet corner in a forgotten neighborhood, something life-changing had just begun, and Kennedy didn't even know it yet. Samuel Price had everything money could buy, or at least that's what he'd convinced himself of for years. As the CEO of a global renewable energy company, he had a portfolio full of luxurious assets, private jets, mansions, rare cars, but none of it filled the hollow space in his chest. It wasn't always this way. Samuel had come from nothing. He was raised in foster care, bouncing from one home to another, never quite fitting in. The world had treated him like an outsider from the start. He knew what it felt like to be invisible. But that had changed the moment he turned 30 and launched his company. Over the years, as his business skyrocketed, so did his wealth. He was now a billionaire, a name on the lips of Wall Street executives. But inside, Samuel felt lost. The glitz and glamour of high society didn't satisfy his need for connection. That's why he started taking breaks from his cushy lifestyle. He would disguise himself as a homeless man and wander the streets of various cities, trying to reconnect with the world he had once known. It wasn't about sympathy or guilt. He was looking for something real, something authentic, far away from the glittering dinners and fake smiles he was so accustomed to. Atlanta was his latest stop. He had arrived a few days earlier, blending in as just another scruffy man in need of a hot meal. It wasn't his first time doing this, but this time there was something different. Something that happened as he sat on the dirty bench by the bus station. It was Kennedy. When she walked up to him with that sandwich, the way her eyes sparkled with genuine kindness, Samuel was taken aback. No hesitation, no judgment, just a simple act of humanity. Kennedy didn't care that he looked rough or that he didn't belong. She saw a person in need and offered what little she had. He hadn't been expecting it. In fact, he wasn't sure anyone would have ever thought to give him anything, let alone a child. Samuel watched her walk back to her grandmother's sandwich stand. Her carefree attitude in the face of hardship was something he had rarely seen. He couldn't help but wonder what it would have been like if he had someone like her around when he was growing up. Perhaps things would have been different for him. 2 days had passed since Kennedy Moore gave her sandwich to the scruffy man at the bus station. The memory of his worn-out clothes and tired eyes stuck with her, but her life had returned to its usual rhythm. She helped her grandma with the sandwiches, running small errands for her, trying to stay focused on their next meal. But as she wiped sweat from her forehead and arranged another batch of sandwiches in the cooler, something unusual happened. A deep, rumbling sound cut through the hustle of the street, a sound that wasn't common in this part of town. Kennedy turned toward the noise, her eyes widening as a sleek white Rolls-Royce came into view. The car gleamed like it had just been polished, its pristine exterior contrasting sharply against the cracked sidewalks and faded storefronts around it. She wasn't the only one who noticed. A few heads turned and pedestrians slowed their steps, gazing at the luxurious car as it rolled up to the curb. The neighborhood had seen its fair share of beat-up cars, but never anything like this. The car stopped right in front of the sandwich stand, and the engine quieted. Kennedy stood frozen in place, her heart racing. The back door opened, and out stepped a man in a dark gray suit. He had sharp features, dark hair, and a commanding presence. But what stood out the most was how out of place he looked in the gritty surroundings. Kennedy squinted, then blinked. Was that him? It was the same man from the other day, the one she had given the sandwich to. But now he was impeccably dressed, looking nothing like the disheveled man she had met by the trash cans. He was clearly someone important, someone powerful. She stood still, her breath catching in her throat, unsure whether to approach. He seemed to be walking toward her, his stride confident yet calm. He stopped just in front of the sandwich cart, his eyes meeting hers. Well, he said with a warm smile, if it isn't the kind young lady who shared her lunch with a stranger? Kennedy blinked again, now fully certain it was the same man. She glanced nervously at her grandmother, who was busy adjusting the napkins and didn't yet notice the exchange. You're the guy from the bus station, Kennedy said, still in disbelief. You're not homeless? He chuckled, shaking his head. No, I'm not. But I do like to test myself from time to time to see what life is really like when you strip away everything. Kennedy looked down at her shoes, embarrassed. I didn't know. You didn't need to know. You saw someone who needed help and gave it without hesitation. That's the kind of person you are, Kennedy, and that's why I'm here. Samuel paused, pulling something from the inside of his jacket, a sleek black envelope. I'd like to help you if you'll let me. Kennedy's eyes widened as he handed her the envelope. It felt thick and important in her hands, like it contained something far more than just paper. I want to offer you something, Samuel said softly. You've got a kind heart, and I don't forget kindness. She glanced at the envelope, then up at him. What is this? What do you mean? I want to send you to a better school. I want to make sure you have the opportunities I never did when I was your age. Your potential is far beyond what this neighborhood can offer. Kennedy's head spun. A better school? Opportunities? Before she could respond, Miss Loretta came over, eyes wide as she took in the scene. Samuel smiled at her, his expression gentle. Miss Loretta, you've raised a remarkable granddaughter. It's clear she has a heart of gold. Miss Loretta looked between Samuel and Kennedy, trying to make sense of what was happening. What's going on here? Let's just say I've met someone extraordinary, Samuel said, smiling warmly at both of them. And I'd like to help change her life. Miss Loretta stood on the sagging porch of their duplex, wiping her hands on a dish towel when she saw the sleek, silver Rolls-Royce pull up to the curb. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Fancy cars didn't belong in their neighborhood, and in her experience, people who stepped out of them never brought good news. Kennedy's voice rang out as she bounded up the walkway. "Grandma! Grandma! It's him! The man from the park!" Samuel Price stepped out of the car, wearing a tailored charcoal suit and no longer pretending to be just another drifter. His posture, his watch, the polished shine on his shoes. It was clear now that he was someone important. Someone with power. Miss Loretta folded her arms across her chest. "And who exactly are you?" Samuel extended a respectful nod. "Ma'am, my name is Samuel Price. I met your granddaughter yesterday. She shared her sandwich with me when she thought I was homeless." Loretta glanced down at Kennedy, who stood beaming beside him, then back at the stranger. "You expect me to believe a millionaire just happened to be sitting on a bench pretending to be broke?" "No, ma'am, I wasn't pretending. I was searching," Samuel replied honestly. "Sometimes I step away from boardrooms and money to remember what real life looks like." That day, Kennedy reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Compassion without condition. Miss Loretta didn't blink. "And now what? You show up in that shiny car with some kind of offer?" "I do," he said, reaching into his coat pocket and pulling out a sealed envelope. "This is a full scholarship offer to Greenbrier Academy. I've arranged for her tuition, supplies, and mentoring. She's special. I saw it in 5 minutes, and I'm betting everything that I'm right." Kennedy's mouth dropped open. "Wait, Greenbrier? That school with the marble floors?" Miss Loretta's eyes scanned the envelope but didn't take it. "And what do you get out of this?" Samuel paused before answering. "Redemption," he said softly, "and the chance to help someone who didn't ask for help, but deserved it anyway." Loretta's voice trembled slightly. "You got any kids, Mr. Price?" "No, ma'am, never had the chance," she nodded slowly. "Then you might not know what it's like to raise one in a world that forgets kids like mine even exist. But I do. So forgive me if I don't jump up and down just yet." "I respect that," Samuel replied. "You don't have to decide today. I'll arrange for my attorney to meet with you. No tricks, no fine print." Miss Loretta finally reached for the envelope. She opened it, her eyes scanning the crisp letterhead, the signatures, the check made out directly to the school. Then she looked at Kennedy. The little girl's eyes weren't on the envelope or the car, they were on her grandma, full of hope and worry at the same time. Loretta sighed deeply, blinking back tears. "If you're lying to me, Samuel Price, I swear." "I'm not," he said gently, "and I promise she'll never owe me a thing." For the first time, Loretta nodded. Just once. Kennedy jumped into her grandma's arms. "We're gonna be okay, Grandma." Loretta hugged her back tightly. "We just might be, baby. We just might." The following days, Kennedy stood frozen in front of the tall iron gates of Greenbrier Academy, her fingers trembling slightly as she clutched her new backpack. It wasn't from a thrift store like all the others she'd used before. This one was brand new, navy blue with her initials stitched in gold. A gift from Mr. Price's assistant, along with neatly pressed uniforms and shiny black shoes that still felt foreign on her feet. Miss Loretta stood beside her, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "You sure you got this, baby girl?" Kennedy forced a nod, her voice barely a whisper. "I think so, Grandma." "Remember, no matter how fancy it gets in there, you belong," Loretta said firmly. "You walk proud. You earned this." The gates creaked open, and Kennedy stepped inside, her senses overwhelmed. The courtyard looked like something out of a movie. Stone fountains, towering oak trees, and a group of students who looked like they'd never missed a meal in their lives. Kennedy kept her head down as she walked past them, feeling every pair of curious eyes follow her. She was the only black girl in sight, and definitely the only one who had arrived by city bus instead of chauffeured SUV. In the main office, a cheerful woman greeted her. "You must be Kennedy Moore. We've been expecting you. Come, I'll show you to your locker and introduce you to your mentor." As they walked through the gleaming halls, Kennedy's nerves started to buzz. Locker combinations, class schedules, orientation packets. It was all moving so fast. She felt like a visitor in someone else's dream. Then she met Ava Sinclair. Ava was tall, blonde, and dressed in a uniform that somehow looked like it came from a designer boutique. She gave Kennedy a small smile. "You're my mentee, huh? Cool. You're the scholarship girl, right?" Kennedy's shoulders tightened, but she nodded. "I mean, that's dope. You had to work hard to get here," Ava added quickly, sensing the discomfort. "Most of us were just born into it." Kennedy looked up at her, surprised. "Thanks. I just want to do well." "You will," Ava said. "Stick with me, and I'll help you figure out who to avoid and which teachers actually care." Throughout the day, Kennedy took it all in. Smart boards instead of chalkboards, tablets instead of paper, and meals with options she'd never even heard of. Still, between the privilege and pressure, she held on to one thing: her reason for being here. Later that afternoon, Samuel's driver showed up to take her home. She gasped when she saw the car. Not the Rolls-Royce this time, but a modest black sedan, still sleek but unassuming. Samuel had thought of everything, including not embarrassing her. Inside, the driver handed her a note. "Proud of you already. Keep going." SP Miss Loretta stood on the sagging porch of their duplex, wiping her hands on a dish towel when she saw the sleek silver Rolls-Royce pull up to the curb. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Fancy cars didn't belong in their neighborhood, and in her experience, people who stepped out of them never brought good news. Kennedy's voice rang out as she bounded up the walkway. "Grandma! Grandma, it's him! The man from the park!" Samuel Price stepped out of the car, wearing a tailored charcoal suit and no longer pretending to be just another drifter. His posture, his watch, the polished shine on his shoes. It was clear now that he was someone important, someone with power. Miss Loretta folded her arms across her chest. "And who exactly are you?" Samuel extended a respectful nod. "Ma'am, my name is Samuel Price. I met your granddaughter yesterday. She shared her sandwich with me when she thought I was homeless." Loretta glanced down at Kennedy, who stood beaming beside him, then back at the stranger. "You expect me to believe a millionaire just happened to be sitting on a bench pretending to be broke?" "No, ma'am, I wasn't pretending. I was searching," Samuel replied honestly. "Sometimes I step away from boardrooms and money to remember what real life looks like." That day, Kennedy reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Compassion without condition. Miss Loretta didn't blink. "And now what? You show up in that shiny car with some kind of offer?" "I do," he said, reaching into his coat pocket and pulling out a sealed envelope. "This is a full scholarship offer to Greenbrier Academy. I've arranged for her tuition, supplies, and mentoring. She's special. I saw it in 5 minutes, and I'm betting everything that I'm right." Kennedy's mouth dropped open. "Wait, Greenbrier? That school with the marble floors?" Miss Loretta's eyes scanned the envelope but didn't take it. "And what do you get out of this?" Samuel paused before answering. "Redemption," he said softly, "and the chance to help someone who didn't ask for help but deserved it anyway." Loretta's voice trembled slightly. "You got any kids, Mr. Price?" "No, ma'am. Never had the chance." She nodded slowly. "Then you might not know what it's like to raise one in a world that forgets kids like mine even exist. But I do. So forgive me if I don't jump up and down just yet." "I respect that," Samuel replied. "You don't have to decide today. I'll arrange for my attorney to meet with you. No tricks, no fine print." Miss Loretta finally reached for the envelope. She opened it, her eyes scanning the crisp letterhead, the signatures, the check made out directly to the school. Then she looked at Kennedy. The little girl's eyes weren't on the envelope or the car. They were on her grandma, full of hope and worry at the same time. Loretta sighed deeply, blinking back tears. "If you're lying to me, Samuel Price, I swear." "I'm not," he said gently, "and I promise she'll never owe me a thing." For the first time, Loretta nodded. Just once. Kennedy jumped into her grandma's arms. "We're gonna be okay, Grandma." Loretta hugged her back tightly. "We just might be, baby. We just might." Greenbrier Academy's grand auditorium gleamed with crystal chandeliers and velvet curtains as Kennedy sat nervously in the second row. The school was holding its annual Visionaries of Tomorrow assembly, where students with exceptional potential were recognized, and to Kennedy's complete shock, her name had been listed. "Must be a mistake," she whispered to Ava, who sat beside her. Ava grinned. Nope. Mr. Aldridge announced it in homeroom. Said you've shown a rare blend of character and drive. That's Greenbrier code for, we weren't ready for you, but now we're impressed. Kennedy's heart thumped loudly in her chest. She couldn't stop thinking about how fast her world had changed, from handing out half a sandwich to standing here in a room full of power suits and legacy kids. The principal, Mrs. Kensington, stepped up to the podium. This year, we have a very special honoree, a new student who's already left a mark through humility, courage, and kindness. Kennedy felt the air suck from the room. A young lady who reminds us what education is truly for, lifting not just ourselves but others. Kennedy Moore, please come forward. Time slowed. Her knees wobbled as she walked to the stage, hands sweating, eyes darting over the sea of well-dressed students and donors. She didn't feel ready, but she remembered what her grandma told her before she left that morning. Sometimes being chosen feels like fear. You just gotta walk through it anyway. She reached the podium. Her voice cracked at first. I didn't think I belonged here. A hush fell over the room. I thought this place was for kids born into it, but I guess belonging isn't about how much money you have. It's about what you do when nobody's watching. She paused, glancing down at her slightly worn dress shoes, still polished but no longer new. I helped a stranger because I knew what it felt like to be hungry. I never expected anything back. But that moment changed my life. And now I want to spend my life doing the same, changing someone else's moment. Maybe that's what success really is. The auditorium erupted into applause. In the back row, Samuel Price sat in silence. He didn't clap. He just smiled. A warm, proud smile. Later that day, Kennedy was approached by a few students who had never even looked at her before. Hey, that was amazing, one said. You made me think. You're like the realest person here, another added. Even teachers she hadn't met yet were nodding at her in the halls, saying well done or great words. Kennedy didn't care about popularity or praise. What she cared about was the feeling rising in her chest, like she'd finally stepped into her purpose. She wasn't just a scholarship student anymore. She was a leader. Months passed, and Kennedy settled into her life at Greenbrier Academy. She had her ups and downs, of course. There were moments when she felt out of place, and times when the pressure seemed almost unbearable. But with each challenge, she grew stronger, more resilient, and more determined to prove to herself that she belonged. Her relationship with Ava blossomed into a genuine friendship. They studied together, laughed together, and supported each other through tough times. Ava, once an icy stranger, became a confidant, someone who admired Kennedy's heart more than her grades or background. But it wasn't just the friendships that changed her world, it was the opportunities. Kennedy became involved in several community service projects through the school where she could channel her desire to help others. From tutoring younger students to organizing food drives, she found herself in leadership positions she never thought possible. It wasn't just about proving herself to others anymore. It was about fulfilling the promise she'd made to herself and her grandmother, that she could be more than the world expected of her. Then came the annual gala, Greenbrier's most prestigious event. Families from all over the country attended, and the spotlight was on those students who were already well on their way to becoming the future leaders of America. Kennedy had been invited, not just as a guest, but as one of the honored students. The night of the gala, she stood in front of the full-length mirror in her dorm room, adjusting the straps of her dress. It was an elegant white gown, one that she'd never imagined she'd wear. But now it felt like it belonged to her. She'd earned it. As she descended the grand staircase of Greenbrier's ballroom, she saw the faces of her classmates, her peers, gazing at her with respect and admiration. She wasn't the scholarship girl anymore. She was Kennedy Moore, a young woman who had risen through hard work, integrity, and kindness. Samuel Price was there, of course. He stood across the room, watching her with a proud smile. As their eyes met, he nodded in approval. She didn't need words to know he was happy for her. He was happy because she was happy and because she had found her place in the world. Later that evening, as the festivities continued, Kennedy found herself standing beside him, sipping on sparkling water. "You've come a long way," Samuel said, his voice filled with warmth. Yeah, it doesn't feel real sometimes, Kennedy replied, still in awe of the life she was living. You've done more than anyone ever expected, and you'll continue to do so. I'm proud of you, Kennedy. You've changed everything. I couldn't have done it without you, she said softly. I know I wouldn't be here if you hadn't seen something in me when no one else did. Samuel's smile deepened. I just gave you a chance. You did the rest, and now you're changing the world around you. Kennedy paused, looking around the ballroom at the other students who had once been strangers and now were her friends. She thought about her grandmother, who would have never believed how far they'd come, how proud she would be. She looked back at Samuel. You know, you don't have to give people what they want to change their lives. Sometimes all it takes is giving them the chance to be who they truly are. Samuel nodded, a gleam of understanding in his eyes. You're right. That's what you've done. You've changed the world by being yourself. Kennedy smiled, and for the first time since arriving at Greenbrier, she truly felt at home. The road ahead was long, and there were still challenges to face, but she knew she could handle them, one step at a time. She had finally stepped into the future she once thought was impossible, and it was all hers to shape. No longer defined by where she came from, but by who she was becoming. Kennedy's journey from a humble girl with a heart full of hope to a respected student at Greenbrier Academy proves that success isn't just about where you come from. It's about who you are and the choices you make. With determination, compassion, and the right opportunities, Kennedy found her place in the world, showing us all that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change the course of a life forever. If Kennedy's story inspired you, remember that no matter where you come from, you have the power to make a difference. Like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories that remind us of the strength and kindness. And don't forget to leave a comment about the moments that have changed your own life.